Of Cook's Illustrated magazine. It's America's Test Kitchen. With your host, Christopher Kimball. Featuring Test Kitchen chefs Julia Collin-Davison, Bridget Lancaster, Becky Hayes. With Adam Reed in the Equipment Corner and Jack Bishop in the Tasting Lab. Discover the secrets of America's foremost food testers and tasters. Today on America's Test Kitchen. Today on America's Test Kitchen, Bridget uncovers the secrets to perfectly poached fish. Then, Jack challenges Chris to a tasting of oyster crackers. Next, Adam reviews oyster knives in the Equipment Corner. And finally, Julia uncovers the secrets to foolproof salmon cakes. That's all right here on America's Test Kitchen. America's Test Kitchen is brought to you by DCS by Fisher & Paykel. America's cooks rely on innovation and culinary precision. DCS by Fisher & Paykel, offering premium indoor and outdoor kitchen appliances.
And by Kohler, inspiring home chefs to create a professional-level kitchen with innovative sinks, faucets, and cook centers. Kohler.
Diamond Crystal Salt for the professional chef and those who want to cook like one. From our family to yours, fresh from the field, Foxy Organic Vegetables. Cooking.com, an online retailer for the kitchen enthusiast. If it's not in your kitchen, try ours. Wente Vineyards, family owned, estate grown, sustainably farmed since 1883. Lee Kum Kee, providing authentic Chinese sauces for the past 125 years.
You know, it's true, the French aren't always right, and that's especially true when it comes to poaching fish. Back in the 70s, when I was first learning to cook, I bought a poacher just like this one, put a side of salmon on it, and it came out, well, I thought it came out great, but guess what? It turns out that all the flavor leaves the fish and ends up in the water. So let's go into the kitchen with Bridget and figure out a whole new way to poach fish, this time in oil. So this is a little advertisement for our tweets and our Facebook page.
Okay.
Here's my favorite tweet in the last month. My dream job involves C.P. Kimball and his sexy bow tie.
Really? Did you tweet that yourself?
Yeah, I did. No, I just want to say a word about bow ties. Here in Boston, it's not that bow ties are now popular. Nobody stopped wearing them.
That's right.
If you do the same thing long enough, the world catches up with you.
There you go. Fashion always comes around.
Stick to it.
All right, so let's move on to fish. We're going to oil poach fish, and it's very different from frying. We're not using a high temperature to cook the fish. This is what they do in restaurants. They'll take the fish and they submerge it in oil, and the oil is at a lower temperature, 180 degrees or below. And what that oil does is it cooks the fish gently, so you get a nice silky texture. It's actually quite ingenious.
And for $38, it should be silky.
Well, now you know the problem. Besides the expense of the fish, you've got to fill up a pot with olive oil, and olive oil is not cheap. So we wanted to find a way that we could cook the fish but use a lot less oil. Now we're using 4 6-ounce white fish fillets, and we've got halibut here. Now we want to get some seasoning into the fish, so I've got some kosher salt. I'm going to use a 1/4 teaspoon on each fillet. If you can't find halibut, or if it doesn't look good at the supermarket, you can use cod, or you can use red snapper, or even sea bass is a great option. So we are going to actually let this sit here for about 20 minutes, and that salt is going to work its way into the fish. It's actually going to draw out some of the moisture from the fish, create a very concentrated brine, and then work its way back in. So now we're going to work on our vegetable garnish, and we're using artichokes. Now these are frozen artichokes, 4 ounces. We've gone ahead and thawed them and then patted them dry, and these are actually going to fry in the oil. But to get them extra crisp, we're going to add a tablespoon of cornstarch. So I just want to toss this in the cornstarch. All right, so I can just start to see that oil shimmer. So it's time to add in the artichokes. We want to cook these until they're crispy and golden, and that's going to take about 2 to 4 minutes. Doesn't that look great?
It does look great.
It's only been a couple of minutes, and they're nice and fried and crisp, but we want to continue to flavor that oil and our garnish. This is 3 cloves of garlic, which we've minced. I'm just going to cook this quickly for about 30 seconds till the garlic just starts to turn golden. That is it. I'm going to pull it right off the heat. Just going to strain this mixture. Get all the garlic out of the pan. So I'm putting this on paper towel lined plate. So super crispy. And now I just want to sprinkle it with a little bit of salt. All right, so this is that beautiful oil with artichoke and the garlic flavor in it. And we're going to use this to poach the fish, but it's quite hot. We used it to fry before, so we need to cool that down. So I'm going to start the cooling down process by adding another 1/4 cup of oil. That's going to help cool it down. So we need to displace some of that oil. Rather than add more, I'm just going to put a 1/2 of an onion right into the bottom there. There you go. It's going to allow the oil just to rise up a little bit. Now, if you don't want to waste an onion, although the onion will flavor the oil, if you don't want to waste an onion...
You can put a 1/2 tennis ball in there. What?
No, a ramekin.
Oh,
an oven-proof ramekin. That's right. So we're going to let this cool until the oil temperature is about 180 degrees, and that's only going to take about 5 minutes.
Okay. Meanwhile, I want to chat with our science editor, Guy Crosby, about the science of poaching in oil. All right, Guy, you ready? This is going to be a hard one. In developing this recipe, we did a simple experiment. We had a pot of water, a pot of oil, heated them both to the same temperature, put a piece of fish in each, and guess what? The fish in the water cooked faster than the fish in the oil. This makes absolutely no sense to me.
Chris, we have to first understand that temperature is completely different from heat. When we measure temperature of something, we're measuring how fast molecules move around. And as we heat a substance to higher and higher temperatures, the molecules move faster and faster. But if we have two substances at the same temperature, like oil and water, one will contain a lot more energy in the form of heat than the other does.
All right, so I don't really understand that either. Why?
So we have to understand, why would water contain more energy at the same temperature as oil? And the reason is that water molecules have a very, very strong affinity for each other. We have to separate these molecules from each other before they can speed up. I mean, it's like a crowd of people. They couldn't move very, very fast as long as they're together as a crowd. So we have to put this energy into water to get the molecules to separate so they can speed up and move faster. So it takes a lot more energy to break up water molecules than it does oil molecules, because oil molecules just don't have the same strong affinity for each other.
Okay, I get the more energy going in, but then that energy has to be stored somehow, I assume. So where is it stored?
Right. All molecules will store the energy we put in them as we heat them up. We not only speed up the molecules through space, but we speed up the activity of the molecules in wiggling and vibrating and stretching.
So the water molecules require more energy to separate. They store that energy in the molecule because it's stretching and moving and vibrating. And then I guess the last part is that then gets transferred in the form of heat to the food being cooked. Is that right?
That's right. So water takes about 3 times more energy to heat up to the same temperature that it takes to heat oil up. And all that energy is stored in those water molecules. When you put the fish in there, it cooks the fish very quickly because there's more energy raising the temperature higher. In oil, it has less energy to go into the fish, so it cooks more gently.
So simply stated, 2 different materials, oil and water, heated to the same temperature, can contain very different amounts of energy, and that energy means one can heat food up much faster than the other.
That's correct.
All right, so that is right hovering around 180. So we're good to go. It's cool enough that we can add the fish. All right, so we're going to put these all around the onion. These are skinned side up. All right, you can tell it's the skinned side because it's a little bit pinkier. Just want to spoon a little bit of that oil over the top of each fish, and that's going to prevent the tops from drying out. All right, we are not going to poach this on the stove top because it would just be way too difficult to manage that burner so it was a constant and steady 180 degrees. Instead, we're going to let the oven do the work for us. So I'm going to cover this, keep the fish nice and protected. We're going to put it in a 250-degree oven for about 15 minutes. We're only going to poach that first side. It's a nice, gentle, even, steady heat, and we won't have to worry about it. It's been about 15 minutes. Let's go check on that fish. Oh, chivalry is not dead. Thank you, Chris. All right. So let's take a peek inside. And the fish is only half cooked at this point, just the bottom half. We want to turn this very carefully. So the easiest way is to use 2 spatulas. Just want to get in there gently. All right, last one. There we go. Right, so these are going to go back into that 250 oven until the internal temperature of the fish registers about 130 to 135 degrees. And that's going to take anywhere between 9 to 14 minutes. So I'm going to grab this, but I'm going to have you take that over there because we want to rewarm the garnish.
Oh, I'd be happy to take
I bet.
Yeah.
Put that right on that rack. Thank you.
So let's walk over to the equipment corner. I want to chat with Adam Reed, who's been testing oyster knives. Absolutely 3 things I don't want to do for myself when it's clean a swimming pool, take care of a boat, or shuck an oyster.
Uh-oh.
So I'm here for a little remedial lesson in oyster shucking and also which oyster knife is best.
I went out and found 6 different oyster knives for us to test. You can see that in general, all of these are not so much knives as they are levers. They have wide, blunt, thick blades. And you don't really cut into an oyster as much as you lever into it. And I'm going to have you show us how. You want to open an oyster or two,
Sure,
please?
why not?
Here, take one of the small ones here, because these are a little easier to open. And what you want to do is you take that angled tip of the knife and just work it into that point. That's the hinge where the top and bottom shells are connected, and try and pop open the top shell. Exactly.
Yeah,
that's what you want to do.
There we are.
Now, there are a couple of different style of oyster knives here. We don't have them all, but this one, for instance, is a French oyster knife, and it's got a fairly thin, straight blade made for the French oysters that are flat, called the belons.
Right.
This is a Providence oyster knife, longer, narrower. These 3 are the style that we like the best. It's the New Haven style. And the really distinguishing factor there is this tip that angles up a little bit, which lets you get into the hinge and pop it up. It's also fairly wide and blunt. And the blunt is an important point. One of the things that the testers really liked was a nice thin edge to be able to slide underneath the top shell once you're into that hinge, whereas this one here was really wide and blunt, and it felt a little clumsy. This was actually the winning oyster knife. This is the R. Murphy New Haven style oyster knife. It's $15.71. How's that for a price?
Very New England, very specific.
But testers felt really comfortable with this, that they had dexterity, they had speed, the handle sort of blended right into their hands, and it's going to get you shucking oysters so that I can get you to buy a boat.
So I guess the answer is the R. Murphy oyster knife for $15.71.
Exactly.
All right, so I'm just going to pull this out, and if you could turn the oven off, we're actually going to leave the artichokes in there so they can remain warm. So let's take a look at the fish. They are beautiful, nice and soft and cooked through. Just want to take these out carefully because they are quite fragile. Then we're going to put them right on our serving platter. All right, there we go. So now I'm just going to tent the fish, and we'll let that set on the side while we work on the rest of the dish. Now, this is a very flavorful oil in here. It's cooked the fish. I had the artichokes, the garlic. We're going to use some of that. I'm actually going to pour off a 1/2 cup of oil. I'm going to use this to make a beautiful vinaigrette. About 4 ounces of cherry tomatoes goes in, and a 1/2 of a shallot, 4 teaspoons of sherry vinegar, 3/4 teaspoon of kosher salt, and a 1/2 teaspoon of black pepper. All right, so let's add in the oil. There's a little bit of the fish juices that are in there. It's actually going to help with the body of the sauce. Now we just want to blend this for a couple minutes until it's completely smooth. Now, while we were pureeing this, some of the fish juices might have come out, so we want to use those as well. Use it or lose it, Chris. That's what I always say. All right, so let me put the lid back on, and we'll puree it for about 10 more seconds.
That was easy.
All right, that is easy. I love it. All right, so now we want to strain this just to get any bits of the tomato that are still in there. Now I'm just going to press on the solids. You can see what a beautiful silky sauce that is. So that is it. There you go. We're going to pour the sauce all around the fish. All right, so now crispy artichoke topping, a little bit of parsley. It's a tablespoon for the entire recipe. And we've got 2 ounces of sliced cherry tomatoes just for garnish. And we are done, Chris.
Oh, this is really good.
It's so soft, but it's not greasy at all.
Bridget, you've done a fabulous job. This is now Chez Brigitte at America's Test Kitchen.
Fantastic.
Fantastic. Poaching fish in oil starts with a little salt on the fish for about 20 minutes. Then we fried the artichokes in olive oil. Let that oil cool down, added some additional oil, and put the fish in the pan with an onion in the center to raise level. Into a low oven for about 15 minutes, then flip the fish around for another 10 to 15 minutes. When the fish comes out, you made a simple blender vinaigrette with tomatoes, shallot, and a little bit of juices left over from the poached fish. And there you have it, from America's Test Kitchen to your kitchen, a très élégant recipe from Chez Brigitte, which is oil poached fish. Wonderful sauce and with fried artichokes to boot.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I've been host of the show for 13 years and president of this company for over 30, so we decided we'd go out into the field and solicit videos. And this is a video from one of our youngest viewers to see which of the cast members he actually loves the best.
Who is this?
Bridget.
Bridget, good. And who's that?
That's Jack.
That's Jack, good. And who's that?
That's Julia.
Good, Julia.
Good. And who's this?
Chris.
Chris, good. And who's that?
Adam.
Good. Who is your favorite person on the test kitchen?
Jack.
Jack.
Yeah.
This is your last year. It's a retirement party for Jack Bishop. You're getting too popular.
We're celebrating with oyster crackers?
Right, oyster crackers. So oyster crackers, I mean, let's be honest. In New England, they're basically a thickener, right? I mean, you crush them and put them in your chowder. So I don't sit there, you know, watching Downton Abbey, snacking on oyster crackers, but I guess today all that has changed, and that's why we're here.
They're trying to market them as snack food as well as, you know, an accompaniment for your soup. We did two tests. One, the way you're doing it straight out of the bag, and then we did them in soup to sort of see how they would hold up. We did notice that some of the brands really kind of seem too mushy for soup. They seem to have lost some of their history. You know, oyster cracker is an American invention. Vermont and New Jersey argue about who gets credit for it. I know. Well, one of the brands you're going to taste is Old Trenton Company, so New Jersey does have a claim here. They're descended from hardtack, which is, you know, a sea biscuit, basically flour and water with most of the water baked out of it so that it could last for years and years and years, literally at sea. Some of the brands now are kind of soft to begin with. So we did notice huge textural differences in some of them. Some of them seem to have more personality, and others seemed merely to be a thickener. So, anything you're liking? Anything?
Well, I don't understand what this is. I mean, this is just really strange. They're big, sort of bland, meringue-like looking things. Not something you'd really want to eat out of hand.
And they're very hard.
Yeah.
Some of the nicknames I ran across, one of them was Tooth Dullers.
Yes, the American Dental Association suggests you eat these. These are particularly thin and crispy, nice salt. And these are good too, but much better than that, but not as thin and crispy as those.
All right. Well,
so this was my favorite.
and the tasting
Sunshine.
panel favorite, this is Sunshine Crispy. Nice flavor, good for snacking. These also did well in the soup test. They held their shape long enough to be able to get a spoon into the bowl.
And these were my middle favorites.
They taste good, but they fell apart. The Nabisco Premium just basically disintegrated on contact with liquid.
And this was on whaling ships 200 years ago, evidently.
Yes, and this will never disintegrate on contact with liquid. This was the last place. You cannot eat them out of hand, and they really even were just too hard in the soup.
So if you plan on taking a sea voyage for 2 or 3 years, I would take these along with you. But for the rest of us, I would pick Sunshine Crispy oyster crackers. I'm a salmon, and I like to dress up, but every day I'm turned into an ugly, greasy salmon cake that tastes like cat food. So let's go into the kitchen with Julia and find a way to make a salmon cake that dresses me up instead of dresses me down. This is a tweet apropos of my recent costume.
I love that you have your legs back.
I do. I love America's Test Kitchen, but Christopher Kimball's costumes this year reveal a man descending into madness. So anyway.
It's nice to see you back in your human
Why
form.
not? I mean, you know, where else can one dress like a salmon?
That costume was fabulous.
It was great.
So on to our salmon cakes. The perfect salmon cake has 3 characteristics that we look for. The first is that it's crunchy on the outside, but very moist on the interior. The second is that it has a good, clean flavor that tastes like salmon, but doesn't tip over into the fishy side of things. And the third thing, they have to be easy. You want to be able to make them really quickly on a weeknight, and this recipe can be made in under 30 minutes. So we're going to start with panko, and this is Japanese breadcrumbs. That's 3 tablespoons of panko. This is a thinly sliced scallion, 1 minced shallot, a little bit of parsley. This is 2 tablespoons. This is 2 tablespoons of mayonnaise, little bit of lemon juice, 4 teaspoons of lemon juice, a teaspoon of Dijon, some salt, 3/4 of a teaspoon, 1/4 teaspoon of pepper, and a pinch of cayenne. So we're just going to combine these things together so that when we add the fish, we can just fold it in gently. All right, so we're going to set this aside, and now on to the main ingredient, the salmon. Now this is a piece of 1 1/4 pound center cut salmon, and it's skinless, which is nice. You can do this yourself, or if you can have your fishmonger do it for you. But if you buy it with the skin on, you're going to need to buy a little extra. You're going to have to buy 1 1/3 pounds, because of course when you take the skin off, you lose some weight. And a lot of recipes tell you to chop it by hand, which works really well, but it takes forever. So we're going to use the food processor. And before you add the salmon to the food processor, it's important to cut the fish down into 1-inch chunks. And I'm going to process it in 3 batches. There's not a lot of salmon in the processor with each batch, so that it can get ground really evenly. So just 2 pulses is perfect. And that's it. So after each batch, we're going to add it right to the bowl of our aromatics. There are some larger pieces and some smaller pieces, and that's good. That'll give the cake some texture. But you don't want pieces larger than 1/4 inch, or else the cakes won't hang together. So we're going to do this 2 more times with the rest of our salmon. All right, so now we're just going to gently fold the salmon and those binders and flavorings together. Now it's time to make our salmon cakes. And the easiest way we found to do this is to use 1/3 cup dry measure. And we're just going to pack the salmon into the cup measure and then drop it onto a baking sheet. And again, there's not a lot of handling here. You're not tossing it back between your hands as though it was a burger. You can just use the cup measure to help you. And so this will make about 8 cakes. Okay, there we are. We're not going to need to chill this at all. We can go right into putting them into the breadcrumbs. And usually when you make a cake, you have the bound breading, which is the flour, the egg, and then the breadcrumbs. But with these, it's so sticky, you don't need that whole rigmarole, which not only saves time, but it allows the flavor of the salmon to come through. So this is just more panko. You're going to drop the cake in the panko, pat it into a cake. It's about 1 inch thick or so. And the thickness does matter here because, of course, it'll determine the cooking time, and you want these to all cook at the same rate. And now we'll just go about breading the rest of these. All right, so I have 1/2 cup of vegetable oil heating up in this 12-inch skillet over medium-high heat. And what we're looking for is that it starts to shimmer but not smoking. And that's when we're going to add the salmon cakes. And I'm starting to see some of that shimmer. So I'm going to add the salmon cakes right to this skillet. One right in the middle. And now we're going to cook these through very quickly, only about 2 minutes aside. All right, so that timer is about to go off, and I know I started the timer after I put the first cake in, and these are looking gorgeous. So I'm just going to gently flip them over. And of course, I'm using 2 spatulas. One is for flipping and one is for catching, and that way you don't splatter any oil about. So we're just going to go for another 2 to 3 minutes on this side till that second side is nice and crisp, and they're pretty much cooked all the way through. All right, so these have been cooking on the second side for a couple of minutes, and just check. Oh, nice and gorgeous.
They look fabulous.
And they're nice and crunchy on the outside on both sides. So I'm going to take them gently out of the pan and just let them drain for a second on some paper toweling.
You know, this recipe is easy. This has a few ingredients. Takes 10 minutes to make, start to finish.
Yep.
And I assume they taste good, but we'll find out in a second.
Et voila! Dinner is served. So we have some tartar sauce or just some lemon wedges, depending on what your mood is.
Or both.
Or both. I like how you think.
So it meets all my requirements so far.
It does.
Easy, fast, natural.
Crunchy on the outside, moist on the inside. Tastes like nice, clean salmon, but not fishy.
These are great. So great salmon cakes, who knew, started with fresh salmon, not cooked. Just a minimum of binder. And then we put that in a skillet with 1/2 cup of hot oil and just 2 or 3 minutes aside, and bingo, you're done. A great recipe from America's Test Kitchen to your kitchen. Very easy, quick, and delicious salmon cakes. You can get this recipe, all the recipes from this season of America's Test Kitchen, tasting results, testing results, and view selected episodes at our website, americastestkitchentv.com. Excellent job. Very good.
These are winners.
us help with dinner tonight. Visit our website anytime for free access to this season's recipes, taste tests, and equipment ratings, or to watch current season episodes. Log on to americastestkitchentv.com.
The Complete America's Test Kitchen TV show cookbook includes every recipe, tasting, and testing from all 13 years' shows, including this season. With over 850 recipes, it's our most comprehensive collection ever. The cost is $29.95, $10 less than the cover price. You will also receive this 4-DVD set, a $39.95 value, featuring all 26 episodes from this season at no additional charge. To order, call 1-800-831-8315 or order online at americastestkitchentv.com.
America's Test Kitchen is brought to you by DCS by Fisher & Paykel. America's cooks rely on innovation and culinary precision. DCS by Fisher & Paykel, offering premium indoor and outdoor kitchen appliances. Cooking.com, an online retailer for the kitchen enthusiast. If it's not in your kitchen, try ours. From our family to yours, fresh from the field, Foxy organic vegetables. Kohler. Diamond Crystal Salt, the gourmet choice. Wente Vineyards. And by Lee Kum Kee.